freedom, pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So with deep appreciation for these freedoms that we enjoy in our wonderful country, as we get ready to celebrate our patriotic holiday, the 4th of July, Independence Day next weekend. I'm Dr. George Simon. Welcome to the program, Character Matters, program that discusses what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the defining social issue of our time, and that is the character crisis that we face in our great country, and the problem, I think, affects more than anything else the freedoms that we enjoy. It impacts the freedoms that we enjoy as Americans, because our freedoms depend upon people of character, upholding the best ideals that we have and behaving in a responsible way so that we can prosper and do so without so much government intrusion into our lives. This was a grand experiment in freedom, this country. It was born with the idea, founded with the notion that if good people were left alone, they would prosper naturally, and that they would build prosperity for all to enjoy. And what we have threatening our freedoms right now is a character crisis, the likes of which we haven't seen in many, many years. So this is the program where we talk about that. We talk about what we're going to have to do to make character cool again. I'm borrowing a phrase there from a friend of mine who has a new book out, by the way. I'm going to be telling you a little bit about that. She has a pretty good following, and rightly so, because she has some very helpful advice for folks who have been, as we say, played for the fool by their unfaithful spouses. We hear so many things these days about what causes people to be unfaithful, to forsake their vows. And as with everything else, everything is a disease these days. We now have such things we call sexual addictions, Not that they don't exist. I think that they do exist from time to time, quite rarely so, however. But the popular press and the popular wisdom would have you think that these addictions are everywhere, but in fact they're not. This is a rare occurrence. More often than not, people are untrue simply because they can be. Because we live in the age where people don't take their responsibilities seriously. They make promises that they don't intend to keep. They enter into relationships without any sense of the kind of responsibility that it takes to make a relationship really work. And so that's really what's behind many of the so-called addictions that we term, for lack of a better term. But I believe that what we're really facing more than anything else is a crisis of character, a crisis of conscience, a crisis of responsibility, whereby people don't take seriously the commitments they make anymore, and they betray one another, they hurt one another needlessly as a result. I'm thinking that we will have some discussion on this as we go through the program, so I want to give out the number for you. If you want to call in and join the discussion, the number is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. If you want to call in and join the discussion, be happy to have you. And we'd be more than happy to patch you in and have you give us your experience. If you happen to have been chumped yourself or know what it's like to have been played in a relationship, you might want to give us a call, discuss that. And if you have any other issues you want to be discussing, we're happy to entertain that as well. I have several announcements to make. One of them involves Miss Shorn, Tracy Shorn, the chump lady I spoke just moments ago about. In addition to having a new book out, which hit Amazon this past week, and which is called The Chump Lady's Survival Guide to Infidelity. That's the name of the book. The Chump Lady's Survival Guide to Infidelity. And it's on Amazon right now. You can get that. But she's going to be a guest on the program. She's going to be a guest. I believe on the 13th. That's July the 13th, Sunday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. July 13th, we'll have Miss Shorn on, and she'll be talking about her new book. Among other things, we'll have a good discussion about the problems many folks face in relationships these days, not just the problems of infidelity, but the problems that, all the rest of the kinds of problems that plague relationships. We'll have a good discussion about that, I'm sure. So tune in on the 13th of July for my conversation with Tracy Sutton Shorn, the Chump Lady, and visit her blog, if you will. You can visit also my blog, www.manipulative-people.com, and you can visit my website, www.drgeorgesimon.com, and also the counseling resource site that I write for, www.counselingresource.com. I'm going to interrupt the program for just 5 minutes. I'm getting some mixed messages on the computer here about the connection on the program. So once again, I'm going to pause for just 1 or 2 minutes. You may have some dead airspace there, but I need to pause for 1 or 2 minutes, and then I will log back on. One moment. Okay, now we've logged back in, I hope, and I hope we're good to go. And I hope there are no more technical glitches for the rest of the program. At any rate, if you want to join the conversation, it's 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. And as I mentioned before, on the 13th, we'll have Tracy Sutton Shorn, the Chump Lady, talking about her book, The Chump Lady Survival Guide to Infidelity. And we'll be talking about the character crisis plaguing relationships these days. And it should be a really wonderful discussion. Also, next weekend, because it is Independence Day weekend, on Sunday, even though the 4th of July will have passed by a couple of days, we're going to have a renewed discussion about the interrelationship between character and the freedoms that we enjoy in this great country. And so the theme of the program will be quite patriotic. And once again, I'll have an occasion to play for you in its entirety the theme that you hear at the beginning, at the end of every show. A theme that I'm proud to say every year gets a little bit more attention when folks go to the websites and hear it for the first time. You can catch America, My Home, the song that plays at the introduction, and at the end of the program you can go to YouTube and view any number of videos with the song accompanying it. If you just search either America, My Home, or its formal title, Anthem for the Millennium, or go to my YouTube channel, Dr. George K. Simon, on YouTube. You'll also find on that channel several of my videos that are excerpts from webinars that I have done in the past, and a webinar series that will be coming up in the next few months. I'll have some announcements to make about that next time we talk. So please visit my blog, www.manipulative-people.com, my website, www.drgeorgesimon.com, and the counseling resource site, www.counselingresource.com. That's counseling, by the way, with 2 L's, because the Brits do it that way. And you'll find many of my articles. You'll find links to my books. You'll find links to the song and other works, links to the videos. You'll find all that by visiting these sites. And of course, my books are available on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com, iBooks, all the major resellers, Kindle. You can download it as an ebook. My books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People. My book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, and my book, The Judas Syndrome, targeted primarily to the Christian faith community. So you can find all that information about that either by doing a Google search or going to my website or blog or going on YouTube and going either to my channel or searching for those items on YouTube. Today's program is going to be a bit of an expansion on the post that I put up on my Manipulative People blog last Friday. The blog article talks about the power of now. the power of the moment, the power to really make a difference in your life by focusing both your time and your energy in the here and now moment and making some changes. You know, when I started working with disturbed characters in therapy, and believe me, as anyone knows, and as anyone who's ever done this, anyone who has been in a relationship with a character-impaired individual knows, traditional kinds of therapy and counseling are just about useless. I get more emails every week from folks who have been the counseling route many times trying to save a broken relationship, trying to understand the disturbed character in their relationship, and saying how either the therapist got bamboozled by their character-disturbed partner, or they put everything into it and still nothing changed, and they ended up having to abandon the relationship anyway. And in retrospect, didn't regret that decision one bit once they claimed a new life. But many times, even after ending a really toxic relationship, individuals who have been in relationships with disturbed characters bear some scars and have trouble getting on with things. And the power of the moment, the power of seizing the moment is really important to them. But how I really came to discover the power of the moment was in my work with disturbed characters in therapy. I had to basically refine some new therapies that were coming on the block that were not in the traditional vein. They were not insight-oriented therapies. They were not therapies designed to get people to kind of see what they were doing and invite them to change, because most of the time, the disturbed characters causing all the problems in relationship knew exactly what they were doing. Most of the time, they didn't need to be illuminated about their behavior. They knew what they were up to, and either they didn't care, as I use this mantra in my workshops, they were aware, but they didn't care. Little rhyming little mantra there that says it all. Or they see, but they disagree. In other words, they understand what you're trying to tell them, but they disagree with you about how you think they should look at the world, how they should interact with the world, how they should behave with other people, the attitudes that they should hold, the kinds of beliefs that they should hold. So they see but disagree. They're aware, but they don't care. I realized this early on in my work, and I realized that all the talk in the world from a disturbed character was not going to make for any change. I had heard so many times what was going to happen differently in time, and especially if the non-character disturbed partner straightened up, how things would be different. But in the moment of dealing with these folks, in the very moment that they were displaying their egocentrism, or in the moment that they were displaying their defiance, or their sense of entitlement, or their inability to relate in a genuine fashion, in that moment was where change needed to occur. And if it was ever going to happen, if there was ever going to be some movement in this person's life where they were going to turn things around and be a different sort of person, it was going to happen in that moment. So what I got used to doing is I got used to confronting in the moment these tactics that I outline in my book In Sheep's Clothing, these manipulation tactics, whenever they were displayed, when someone would minimize, when they would make excuses, when they would blame others, when they would feign ignorance, or they would feign confusion when I had confronted them on something. I would call them on that. Not only would I call them on it, but in the here and now moment, I would invite them to correct it. to change the behavior. Not tomorrow, not next week, not maybe after months of trying, T-R-Y-I-N-G. These folks are among the most trying you'll ever deal with. No. What I wanted was to see them make some movement toward change in the here and now. So at the very moment you're making excuses, at the moment you're casting blame upon the victim for, say, your abusive behavior, your neglectful behavior, your other toxic behavior, at that very moment, I would invite them to stop doing so and to correct that behavior. Not only to correct the behavior, but to correct some of the stinking thinking that went along with it. Some of the problematic attitudes that led to that behavior. More importantly, however, they had to change the behavior first. I found that changing the behavior is what eventually led to a change of attitude, not vice versa. And this is a mistake, by the way, that many therapists who claim to do what we call cognitive behavioral therapy make. What they want to do is they want to get people to think differently first, change the way they think, challenge the way they think, and if they challenge the way they think, then maybe they'll do differently. But you know, you really just have to start doing things differently and see the benefits, and you start thinking differently too. You know, in various modes of therapy, especially behavioral modes of therapy, when somebody has an unreasonable phobia, a fear of, say, like spiders or rodents or something like that, where they are paralyzed with fear and they won't even go near someplace where there, say, a spider is nearby. Well, all you really have to get the person to do is systematically, slowly, steadily get them to make successive approximations to the things they fear. Get them to come closer and closer in contact, maybe even come very close, finally, to a spider, and realize that the world is not going to come to an end. They're likely not going to get bit and die. And then all of a sudden, what happens is a change of heart, a change of mind, a change of attitude, a change in the way of thinking about spiders. All because of doing differently in the here and now moment. Now, that doesn't mean you can, get there overnight. Sometimes, like I said, it has to be very small incremental steps. But once you take those steps in the here and now moment, your entire outlook begins to change. And so this is the heart of these therapies for getting people to do the things that they fear to do. So people have overcome all kinds of phobias this way. And the same thing is true when you're dealing with the behaviors of a disturbed character in therapy. What you want to do is confront those behaviors head on and invite the person to try out an alternate behavior, a more appropriate, more adaptive behavior, and then heavily reinforce them for doing that, and invite them to heavily reinforce themselves for doing that. To recognize the value in changing the behavior. To recognize, for example, how taking others into consideration really plays against that sense of entitlement that they've carried with them for too long, that has led them to disregard and discount others and to think so egocentrically that they create problems in their relationship. So once they change the behavior, pay attention to what somebody else is asking. Listen reflectively. Take the person's input seriously. Respond to it. Once they do those things and realize the benefits, then they begin to see things differently. It's all about changing the behavior in the here and now. So that's how I really got to appreciate the power of the here and now moment. I also came to realize, however, in my work with victims in toxic relationships, survivors of toxic relationships, that that's also exactly what they needed to empower themselves in rebuilding their lives. Because when you're in a relationship with a disturbed character, this is just so typical. When you're in a relationship with somebody whose behavior is basically driving you nuts, you get used to the idea of focusing externally. You're constantly on guard for what they might do or say next. You're constantly tuned in to them and their actions. You're constantly guessing what they're up to, constantly focusing not on yourself and what you need to do to empower yourself, but focusing on this other problem person in your life and trying to gauge what you're going to do next in response to some of their behaviors and anticipating their next moves. And this focusing externally gets to be a really destructive habit. It is destructive for a lot of reasons, but the main reason that it's destructive, and I mention this in both my books, in Sheep's Clothing and in Character Disturbance, and it's one of the most important principles that I emphasize in those books, and that is that when you are focusing either time or energy, in other words, when you're paying attention to and investing any of your emotional energy in something that you don't have the power to control, which is generally something external, a person, place, or thing that you can't control, when you're focused there, you go through the stages much similar to the famous stages that Helen Kubler-Ross wrote about in Death and Dying. You go through the stages where you first get angry and frustrated, and then through a subsequent series of steps, you eventually come to realize that it's you that's having no effect. Nothing you do seems to make a difference. So you turn that anger in toward yourself, and that's when you become depressed. So focusing externally, focusing your time, energy, and attention on people, places, or things that you can't control is not only maladaptive, but it's the formula for depression. And so I realized this early on. And I also realized that if I could help folks to learn to focus in the moment, in the here and now moment, and get their mind off their pathological partner and on themselves and what it is they needed and what it is they wanted and what it was they were willing to do at that very moment to take a step to make things differently, that was empowering. And that was the antidote to the depression that they had been feeling and the formula for the joy that had been lacking in their lives. And so I wrote an article about this very thing on my blog at www.manipulative. Excuse me, I got that backwards there. It's www.manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulative-people.com. And it's a blog post for this week talking about the power of the moment. And it's generated some discussion from folks. Some folks who initially, and rightly so, complained that when you've survived a toxic relationship, when you've been in one, and you're just coming out of that relationship, you don't always make the best choices. You're pretty emotionally scarred You're left befuddled and confused. Many times you second guess everything. Many times you second guess yourself. And so you're not prepared to make all the best choices. But that's really irrelevant to the power that you have to choose. It really is, because you don't have to make the right choice. You don't. You can learn from mistakes. All you really have to do is choose. All you really have to do is do something. Do something different. If it's not exactly the right thing to do different, you'll get feedback about that. And if you pay attention to that feedback and you modify your course and you try something else, then sooner or later you're likely to find the key to something that works. But the key is to keep your energy focused where you have the power, and not to worry about what those people, places, and things external to you are going to do in response. You can't control there. You have no power there. And investing your time and your energy where you have no power will only frustrate you, will only cause you to become angry, disheartened, and eventually depressed. So I wrote this piece on the power of the moment to choose, and I invited folks to enter into a discussion about that, just as I invite you. If you've either read the piece, or you know of what I speak, or you've had some experience with a disturbed character, and you know exactly what I'm talking about here, about that frustration that develops when your attention is turned toward those things that you don't have the power to control, give me a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296, and I'll patch you through, and we'll discuss. I'm sure some of you have experiences out there that would be a benefit for all the listeners to have you share. And once again, I'd like to invite you all to tune in next week for our special patriotic version of Character Matters, and on the 13th, the week following, for a special program where Tracy Sutton-Shorn, the chump lady of that blog fame, who's written another book, The Chump Lady's Survival Guide to Infidelity, she's going to be on the program. I'm going to warn you in advance, it's likely to be a no-holds-barred program. The chump lady admits that she has kind of a potty mouth. She's a real straight talker. She doesn't mince words. She's kind of a matter-of-fact kind of gal, but she's a sincere individual, and I would rather have that over anything. I myself, I'm kind of a prude. I don't know. I got raised in a time when, it was still the time when you had your mouth washed out with soap. I guess I'm going to be dating myself there. So I'm not prone to use, shall we say, salty language. And perhaps my guest will from time to time. But this is the internet after all, and that goes. And that's okay, because frankly, I think many times what victims in toxic relationships and survivors of toxic relationships who are trying to pick up pieces and get on with their life, many times what they really need is some straight talk as opposed to some hand-holding. And that's what they're going to get on the 13th. So I'm cautioning you in advance. It'll be a no-holds-barred kind of program. It'll be a pretty freewheeling discussion, I think, and I hope we'll have many contributors to the program. So that'll be on the 13th, the week after our special Independence Day program. But I want to talk about a little bit more about the power of now and the power that it has to make a difference in your life, because there's something else very important when you seize the here and now moment and make a choice. And this is something that I learned probably about 25 years ago and has stuck with me so much, and that is that a human will, can be trained, and in fact must be trained in order for it to be able to guide people through the difficult times. You know, your grandparents probably talked about willpower. Now, when it comes to strength of will, most disturbed characters don't need any coaching classes in that. They don't need any instruction on how to be willful. Now, when it comes to the right exercise or the principled exercise of their will, they need lots of instruction. But when it comes to the willful exercise of their will, they don't need any. By and large, character-disturbed folks are willful folks. They've got enough willpower for the Russian army. So they don't need any help there. But many times, those folks who have been in relationships with these folks, especially folks who've been in relationships with the folks that I call the aggressive personalities, these are the people who go through life like bulldozers, running over everybody and anything that gets in their way, having what they want at everybody else's expense, taking no prisoners, and leaving bodies in their wake as they make their climb to whatever it is that they're seeking. Victims in those kinds of relationships, survivors in those kinds of relationships, often have had their wills fairly well decimated, and they've grown to be insecure. If they weren't insecure to some degree already, if they were insecure to some degree already, they've become more insecure, and if they weren't insecure to start with, they've become insecure. And so when it comes to exercising their will, they've gotten rusty. And so once they begin to focus again in the moment, in the here and now, and once they get used to focusing on themselves and what it is they need and what it is that they're prepared to do in the here and now moment to make a difference in their life, well, all of a sudden they start getting some willpower back because they're exercising that will. It's a strange concept, isn't it, that the will needs to be exercised? But it does. It's like anything else we have. If we're going to build strength, we have to exercise. And more than that, if we really want to have strength, we have to exercise against some resistance, which means that if you're in a relationship with a character-impaired individual, you'll be getting some resistance, all right, and it's important not to cave in and back down, but to exercise that will in the face of that resistance, to learn the tactics that they're going to throw at you, to know all of them by heart. They're all outlined in the book. In Sheep's Clothing and in Character Disturbance, they're all outlined there. Know them by heart. Know what to anticipate. Then know the empowerment tools to use when you're exercising your own judgment and exercising your own will. Use those tools. They're in the book as well. They're in both books. Use those tools and give yourself an internal pat on the back for so doing. Do this over and over and over again, and you'll be surprised what happens. It's kind of like the old joke of the guy that's on the streets of New York, and a cabbie is stuck in traffic, but is nearby, and the guy asks the cabbie, "How do I get to Carnegie Hall?" And the cabbie says, "Practice, practice, practice." You know, that's what it takes to play that venue. As a concert pianist or a violin virtuoso, you're not going to play Carnegie Hall unless you've got years of refined practice under your belt, and you can make it look easy to folks who have only an appreciation for the beauty of the music, but no real appreciation for how much practice and rehearsal that it takes to have that level of precision. But that's what it takes. It takes rehearsal. It takes practice. And when I'm doing therapy with character-impaired individuals, I call on them to practice in my office at that time when they're displaying their antics, when they're displaying their typical tactics, their typical stinking thinking. I ask them to make changes. And I invite them to reinforce themselves for the willingness to do so. And that makes a difference. But also for relationship survivors, toxic relationship survivors, and for folks in toxic relationships or in troubled relationships with individuals who have some degree of character disturbance. Not everyone whose character impaired to some degree is so severely character impaired that there's no hope. But you have to get used to focusing on what you want, what you need, knowing the tools you can use, knowing how to deal with the tactics that will be thrown at you, and focusing in the moment on making some changes and then reinforcing yourself for so doing. This is the key to personal empowerment. It's also the formula for joy. It's how people get to feel good again about themselves. It's how they build a sense of security. And it's also how they build a sense of self-respect and a sense of self-efficacy. And in the process, what they do is they train and strengthen their wills. They become more solid in their own character, ready to take on the world, ready to make tough choices, ready to make choices, even if they're not the perfect choice, even if they're not the right choice, but to make a choice nonetheless. And let the consequence teach you whether or not it needs to be modified. But making the choices nonetheless, and giving yourself credit for making that choice, is a way to really empower your life, and it's the secret. So I invite folks who haven't done so already to visit my Manipulative People blog. That's www.manipulative-people.com, and read the article this week called on the power of the moment. And also I invite folks to visit my website, www.drgeorgesimon.com. Go to either the website or the blog for information about America, My Home, the patriotic song that you'll hear at the close once again. And please, it's not too late. If you have if you're a singer or a performer of any kind, or you're a part of an ensemble that's going to be doing some performing at a patriotic venue over this coming holiday, and you want a tune that will inspire the folks in your audience and will get them to thinking along the lines of what we need to do to restore our ideals and to cherish, most especially to cherish and preserve the freedoms that we enjoy, go to YouTube and search for America, My Home, or Anthem for the Millennium, its official title, or go to my YouTube channel, Dr. George K. Simon, and check out America, My Home. Play one of the videos, hear it in its entirety, let it move you, and then contact me with the information that's provided there, and I'll be happy to tell you how you can get the scores, how you can get performance backing vocals, orchestration, performance tracks on a CD or with MP3 downloads, so that you can inspire your audience with this wonderful song. And if you should do so, and if you should record your performance, we would love to add it to the America My Home Facebook page, put it up there with the others. So far, almost every state in the Union has had more than one performance. The only exception to that is my birth state of Michigan. Can you believe that? My birth state of Michigan. I was born in Detroit, grew up most of my life in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I've had one performance that I know of, bona fide. There may have been others, but only one bona fide performance that I know of at a major Michigan venue. And that really distresses me just a little bit. I know that in Michigan, every year around this time, because Dominion Day in Canada is about 8 days away from Independence Day in America. So along the Detroit River, the Canadians on the Windsor side and the Detroiters in the metropolitan area, folks on the American side, get together for this big freedom festival, celebrating the freedoms both countries enjoy. And boy, wouldn't it be great if one day, back in my home state, there'd be a performance of the song there at the Freedom Festival. That would be really great. I'd like to see somebody do that. As you'll tell when you hear the piece, it's meant to be a fairly big performance piece. It's primarily an outdoor performance piece, but people perform it more frequently in churches than anywhere else, especially churches where they have a good music program and they have instrumentation or instrumentalists that come in for assisting choir members and soloists. The piece was meant for a soloist with accompanying choral backing as well as instrumentations, but you can get the tracks, like I say. So please go to YouTube, to my channel there, or just search YouTube for America My Home or Anthem for the Millennium, or visit my website, drgeorgesimon.com, or my blog, www.manipulative-people.com. You'll get information there. You'll also get information on my blog about consultations that I do. You can click on the consultation tabs, and you'll find that there. I don't give referrals to therapists. I get probably a dozen requests a week for that. I'm sorry to say that it long ago proved impossible for me to maintain an accurate and up-to-date referral roster to keep up with folks who are familiar with my methods and with the general methods that are necessary for treatment of character disturbance. So I can't do that, but I often engage in consultations with individuals and with therapists, so you can find information on my sites about that. I also want to encourage you to tune in again next week for our special patriotic edition of the program. It'll be 2 days past the 4th of July, but still Independence Weekend, and we're going to be talking very heavily about the interrelationship of freedom and character and what we really have to do to bring character back. You know, I was talking to my friend Tracy Shorn, who's going to be on the program the week following our special Independence Day broadcast. She's going to be on July 13th. I was talking to her about this, and she came up with the slogan, "We'll make character cool again." She writes in a different vein than I do, but she wholeheartedly agrees that this is the defining issue of our time. And she can remember, as can I, a time when character mattered. That's why I titled this program just exactly what it's called, Character Matters. Character does matter. It matters more than anything else. Everything that our country depends on to function, every social institution we have depends upon it. Everything. Our economic system depends on it. Look at what the abuses in our economic system, look at what the abuses in our government have done to us. This is a matter of character. The scandal in the VA couldn't possibly have happened if the people charged with the responsibility had been honest. It came down to one lowly person who was deathly afraid of losing her job. Several whistleblowers or folks who wanted to be whistleblowers at GM, at the VA, at other places have lost their jobs and lost their livelihoods and hit really hard times. There are very few rewards left for people when they display any character, and many more incentives for people to display bad character. We need to bring character back. We need to make it cool again. We need to make it not, first we have to make it okay to have character. In our character impaired times, people get punished for displaying it. People get punished for, quote unquote, ratting out their corrupt administrations on their jobs. How horrible is that? This is where we've come. But character does matter, and we need to not just make it cool again. We need to first make it acceptable. Then we need to make it cool. And then wouldn't it be really nice if we rewarded it, if we really held in high esteem those folks that displayed it? And wouldn't it also be a change to really hold in disdain those folks that don't? How about not electing somebody who refuses to display it? How about not electing somebody who will pander to us, who will give us something that we want just to get our vote, but hasn't the character to act in the best interest of our country? How about making character cool again? I love that slogan. I'm so glad that Tracy suggested it. I'm going to be using it. Maybe I'll come up with some different versions of that too, as well. You're likely to hear us talk about that when Tracy comes on the program on the 13th. So that's July 13th. I want to make sure folks tune in for that. But I also want to be sure that folks go to the website and go to the blog, and especially this week with the article up there on the blog this week that I posted on Friday on the power of the moment. Seizing the now, the here and now moment, and making the commitment to yourself to take a different course of action, to do something in your own behalf, to put your energy where you have the power, and to do it today, to do it now, at this moment, and to get into the habit of doing that, and to get into the habit of recognizing the value of that, giving yourself credit for it, and reinforcing yourself for so doing as a way of strengthening yourself and increasing the odds that you'll do it again. And in time, with rehearsal, with practice, you will strengthen your will, you'll become stronger, and you'll become more empowered. You'll also discover the formula for joy, and you'll end that depressive rut that you've been in, trying futilely, trying with all the futility in the world to make your disturbed character partner see what they're doing. They already see anyway. You don't have to get them to see. As I've said before, they see, they disagree. They're aware, they don't care. You can't make happen something you don't have the power to make happen. You have only power when it comes to your behavior. So it's time for you to decide, plan, and act, and empower your life. And in so doing, discover the joy and power that comes along with that. So that's what the article is all about. I encourage you to read it. There's some wonderful comments by the blog readers. I have the best blog following out there on the internet. I'll say that without any reservation. The comments alone that people and the information that people provide that are avid readers of the blog, that are regular readers and that are regular contributors, I think many times their input is as valuable, if not more valuable, sometimes than the articles I post. Because they have so many things to share. And they also can tell you in what ways they put into practice the principles that I write about in my books In Sheep's Clothing and Character Disturbance. They'll tell you firsthand how they use those principles to turn their lives around. And they'll tell you Many will tell you frankly how the paradigm, the model for seeing things that I present in the books was such a light bulb moment for them. How it fashioned the way they think about things, and how it dispelled some of the false notions that they had entertained for so long, notions perpetuated many times by traditionally minded therapists inadvertently about why the crazy person in their lives behaves the incomprehensible way that they behave and makes their lives miserable. So if you really want to understand it, don't just familiarize yourself with the articles, but familiarize yourself with many of the comments that the readers of these articles have made and the experiences that they've shared. Well worth your time to visit www.manipulative-people.com and my website, www.drgeorgesimon.com, the blog based in the United Kingdom that I write for, www.counselingwith2lsresource.com. And also, I'm going to invite you once again in this week running up to our most important patriotic holiday to go to YouTube and search for America My Home, or Anthem for the Millennium, as its official title is known. Listen to one of the videos, watch one of the videos, listen to the song, let it capture your heart, let it inspire you, and please, if you're musically inclined, or even if you're not so musically inclined, even if you just want to do some karaoke, but you also want to inspire some other folks to treasure these freedoms that we enjoy. These freedoms made possible by people of character behaving responsibly and fulfilling their social responsibilities and helping enterprise, not just for themselves, but for all, for the benefit of all. That's what this country's all about. And that's what the song seeks to inspire people about. So go there, listen, be inspired, and if you have a mind to, contact me. The information's on YouTube and it's on my website. Contact me and I'll provide you with all the materials you need, whether it be a score for the music or whether it be a CD of the backing tracks with orchestration and backing vocals, or whatever you need, or even an MP3 download. Or you can even go to Amazon.com and buy the album called Anthems for the Millennium, where a wonderful singer, Ricky David Tripp, a past country music national championship winner for the National Country Music Showdown, made many appearances on the CMT television. He does the song as the lead song on the album Anthems for the Millennium. You can get that from Amazon.com. So I encourage you to do that. I also encourage you to join me next week for our special patriotic edition of the program Character Matters, where we'll be talking about the interrelationship of freedom and character, the incontrovertible interconnection between the two, the interdependent relationship between the two, and how vital it is that we come to appreciate that once again if we're going to preserve the freedoms that we enjoy. And I also invite you to tune in again the week following on the 13th, when I'll have our special guest, Tracy Sutton Shord, the Trump lady, whose new book on surviving infidelity is available now on Amazon. So until next week, this is Dr. George Simon reminding you once again that character does matter. And as we take you out with America My Home, please remember, freedom reigns.